On this show, we feature Chris McAuley. And welcome back, everybody. This is part 2 of our Dracula special, if you will, featuring a writer, Chris McAuley. Thank you for joining me again this day, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
I'm so excited and honored that you have come on. You've agreed to come on our show. This time around, I want to talk about the 175th anniversary of the release of Dracula by Bram Stoker. And share with us events, visuals, anything you've got. Let's go.
Sure. Right. I'm going to queue up my little slideshow here.
Awesome.
I will be able to show you some of the comic books and all sorts of things that we have.
Awesome. So excited once again because Dracula, the novel and the characters, been such a part of my life since I was about age 6 or so, 6, 7 years old, and the whole mystique and whatnot. And to meet someone who's so involved with the Dracula realm and the Stoker verse and all that is quite exciting as well. And I believe that the world, not just where we're recording from, should share with this. Okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, so the first Stoker verse graphic novel that came out was something that you alluded to earlier. We call it the Virgin's Embrace. It's an updated version of the Squaw. Obviously, we don't use that term now. But yeah, it was the story about the cat and the kitten. And it's very well known and it has been one of, it's a Bram Stoker favorite. Christopher Lee said that this was his favorite Bram Stoker tale. So yeah, so we've got this beautiful cover by Esther Cardella, who's an Italian artist. And we've altered the story slightly. So we injected Bram and Florence in there because we believe that Bram and Florence were in Nuremberg, while Bram was writing this story. It's based in Nuremberg. There's links to Dracula. Nuremberg was where Emperor Sigismund gave Vlad II, so Dracula's father, the Order of the Dragon. We also, the character of Elias, who's in this, he's an American character who's actually based in Buffalo Bill. We link him to Quincy Morris from Dracula. I was very pleased because we were praised by the Canadian Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations about how we balanced the perception of Native American characters in this. It is very hard to update classic stories without losing original context. It's also used as a textbook in various universities now as well, in Edmonton and Washington. So here's some of the visuals of the comic. So Jessica Martin did the main comic. So you can see the virgin that embraces a character is actually the Iron Maiden of Nuremberg. You can see her down at the bottom of the first panel. We've got a lovely image of a native lady that was researched and used. And then we had a Marvel artist called Robert Marzullo, who illustrated this fantastic page, of a fictitious entry into the Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden was never actually used in that way at all. It was never used as a torture device. It was a curio. I coloured that page, which I'm quite proud of as well. Now we come on to some of the Dracula titles. So this is our most recent novel that's come out, called Dracula's Bedlam. Decker and I teamed up with Doctor Who writer, Star Trek writer, Stargate writer called John Peel. And we've set it in the events featured in Seward's Asylum. So what we're doing is we're filling in gaps around the events that happen there. We've got new characters that have been specially created for the narrative. And we also feature shadowy real life personas of the era. So you'll meet Jack the Ripper and characters like that in it. It's a mixed media novel. So there's some graphic novel elements which have been illustrated by Frederick Grossman. And we delve into the origins of vampirism and the origins of Dracula and how Renfield met Dracula before Jonathan Harker. So here's a few of the illustrations that we have. I also tie in the layer of the White Worm into Dracula as well through this novel, as you can see, and the origins of vampirism. Little note to John. This is what John's known for. This is why we picked him. He actually introduced me to literature when I was a child, because I lifted his Doctor Who novels. So that's the kind of person that Decker and I work with. We're very grateful for that as well. We also have stories in various magazines, horror magazines. So we've got the prequel to the Jewel of Seven Stars as well that we mentioned. I've written that, and we include Dracula in that as well. So we basically pepper the myth of Dracula through Bram's works to create a unified universe. We have various Stokerverse tales and anthologies. So I've written a Van Helsing origin story, which links to Bram's concepts of Van Helsing's wife having been put in an asylum. And it's out in Unholy First. That's edited by two Dracula experts, Cliff Biggers and Charles Rutledge. We've got a Jack the Ripper story. It's linked to Dracula, believe it or not. The reason why Jack the Ripper is tied to Dracula is that in one of the books that Bram used in the London Library, he writes Ripper, ? And you have to remember, when Dracula was being written, Jack the Ripper was doing his dastardly deeds. And I've also got a Mina Harker story in an upcoming Indigenous woman anthology. I think I'm the only man that's written in it. I did have to make sure that knew I was a guy, because Chris could be male or female. But yep, that's coming out soon. We have Dracula in audio as well. So Voices of Dracula takes some key elements of the novel, and I had written the script, and we have a whole host of famous people from sci-fi who have starred in it. So we've got Colin Baker, who's the sixth Doctor Who as Van Helsing, Terry Malloy, who's Davros in Doctor Who as Renfield, Jessica Martin, who was in Doctor Who, as Mina Harker. Simon Templeman, Hollywood actor, known people in the Buffyverse will know him. He's featured in many different video games as well. He was Dracula. Lovely man, really captured the spirit of Dracula. And we have my friend and our writing partner, Claudia Christian, as a completely new character called the Thief. And we tie in why Dracula wants Carfax Abbey so badly within this.
Interesting.
We've also got games coming out. So we are truly transmedia. We've got a couple of RPGs that are coming out that are going to be sequel tales to Dracula. And I'm very cautious, but when I say sequel, what I really mean is it's a continuation of the story. It's very hard to write a sequel to a classic piece of literature. In fact, it's impossible. But it's a continuation. It will draw you into the nature of Dracula's previous visit to London. Now, Dracula did not go to London for what people call now booty call. He didn't come over to London because he fell in love with Mina. He came to London because it was the centre of the Victorian Empire, and he was a warlord, and he knew that he could control the world from London.
Wow.
So that's where the game starts to tie in. And we also have a prequel to this story, which is out in a magazine called Place of Stitched. We've got a couple other games that are coming out in different genres. We've got a steampunk game coming out from Trinity Knot Studios, and a little fun dice game called Franklin Dice, which is a bit like Beetle Drive, where you've got several inventors, and they craft their own monsters, and they go out and they attack the town. And we have a miniature war game. So if you know anything about Warhammer and little figures, we have this coming out in December. This is taken from the book, so various scenes taken from the book and extrapolated into a war game. So you take control of various key figures and wage war against the armies of the Dracula's undead. This is done in conjunction with Edgehill University in Lancaster and their literature department. So the Stokerverse is actually connected to several universities at this stage. We also have comics. So we're out in a few comics. So we've got Scar Comics. We're doing sequel to Dracula. I can actually say it's a sequel because Decker and I are writing it together. It's coming out in the next couple of months by Scar Comics, and it will tell you the story after Dracula, and it features unique aspects that were never published in the English version of Dracula, and we can get into that in a minute. Here's more of the Stokerverse stuff. So we do have werewolves, we have Dracula in space, and we have another werewolf sort of hunter story. We're also connected to the world of Doctor Who. So Decker and I have written Dracula into Doctor Who annuals that are coming out this year. And so it was nice. There's my name and there's Decker's name. So there you go.
Cool. Very cool.
Some pages from the Doctor Who annuals as well. And we've written in the Hellraiser universe. And this is with Paul Keane. So there's a few of the things that we have that are coming out that are sort of different, that we're bringing Bram Stoker into this new era, but trying to keep very close to what Bram did, and that's our celebration of the 125th anniversary of the publication of Dracula. Michael.
That's so exciting. When I first went to your website, we'll give out the URL, the website address near the end. It was like this whole world opening up, which you've been kind enough to share with us a little bit of it in the past few minutes. It's like, it's two-dimensional, but to me, it feels three-dimensional. And I'm sure I'm not just saying this to be nice. I'm sure it has everything to do with your writing, which comes alive. It makes imagery and everything come alive, and the illustrations, and even that audio you played for us last show. It's alive, and that's what I believe good fiction makes a person experience. It's as if you can be immersed into a whole world. And that's what comic books have been for me as well. I'm sure a lot of people out there don't know that my dad started buying me comic books when I was 4, 5, even before I was able to read. He brought home from his club, he was a drummer, a musician, these 1940s comic books. And that's how I kind of taught myself to read until I went to school. And it never stopped. My thirst for fiction, for drawing, that's how I learned how to draw. And then I went to college for it, graphic design and all that sort of thing. So you touch a lot of those things that are innately me, or the real me, the Dracula thing, the artistic aspect, the audio visual. And I hope, and I'm sure actually, that a lot of folks out there are being as well moved, dare I say, inspired by some of this, because even just what you just shared with us, to me, it's like, whoa, this is exciting, and drew me in. So no pun, well, maybe pun intended, drew me in. So it's an exciting way to share the excitement of the Dracula realm, the 175th anniversary. We're going to give this out again, but what's your website address?
We've got a couple, actually. We've got www.dark-universes.com, and we have www.stokerverse.com. And we have various Facebook pages. If you look for Stoker McAuley and Stokerverse, you'll certainly find us. It's very kind of you to say all that. Thank you, Nicole.
Well, it's true.
For me, it's about the real Dracula, and we've got a little video for you that we're going to send that you can put up. I think you've already seen, and it's about uncovering that true Dracula. And Dracula has been shown so many ways in cinema and video games and all sorts, but the true Dracula has never really come alive from the novel.
Yeah,
he is a very dark character. I don't think he's romantic. There's a specific scene that I always point to where he's holding Mina to his breast. It's just cut open. And I want the viewers to sort of think about this.
Yes, absolutely.
This is somebody from the grave whose fingernails are probably embedded. Long fingernails are probably embedded with dirt, because Dracula slept in boxes of dirt of his native land. That's part of vampire mythology as well, that Bram kind of lifts from. He then cuts himself open, and it's a dead body. It's not going to be the most pleasant smell. It's not going to be the most pleasant. And he forces Mina's head to him. I don't see anything erotic about that. That's what we're bringing back with Dracula, the boogeyman in the bedroom, the darkness, the narcissism, the evil, because we think he's somebody you should be truly afraid of. And that, strangely enough, bringing back the original Dracula is fresh because it hasn't been seen before. So it's that kind of dichotomy of writing the original character the way Bram did, and bringing that sort of freshness.
There's an irony in that as well. I don't know how you feel about one of the more recent being a couple of years ago, and it was on Netflix. I believe it was Klaus Bang's version of Dracula, his interpretation. And he has those nails, which practically fall off because it's on a dead person. Well, not even a person anymore. And a lot of aspects that were, in my opinion, gruesome, but probably more accurate, because there's a walking corpse, if you will, where a fly happens to land on somebody's eye, I won't give that away, and kind of walks in and around the eye and out as if it's a dead person, which in essence they're suggesting it is. So this 3-part Dracula or version of Dracula, I felt was very realistic in that regard. How do you feel about that?
I've mixed feelings about it. I like Mark Gatiss as a writer and as a person. It's not accurate to the book. Yeah. So again, I have to keep saying that. Yeah. But was it entertaining? Absolutely, up to the 3rd part. And then it just got a bit ridiculous. Dracula using laptops, all of that sort of stuff. Dracula works when he's out of time. Dracula works whenever he's in the Gothic universe really well. When Dracula is exposed to modern technology, it takes away the mystique, it takes away the mystery, it takes away the overall danger. When Bram wrote Dracula, the world was on the cusp between superstition and modern technology. and he writes that so well. Why Dracula is very powerful is that it's Christianity versus paganism.
Yes.
In a modern context where we have psychoanalysis, all of the new sciences of psychology, that loses its strength and its power. And that's unfortunately that's the way it is. What did I like about it? I liked the staging. I liked the acting. I liked Sister Agatha very much. But I found the elements where the Count suddenly becomes very young. That doesn't happen in a novel. When Harker opens up the box and sees him slightly younger but bloated like a leech, we do see that he is younger in London, but not by much. It's not this remarkable regeneration. And they've taken, what's happened is that Ford Coppola has kind of created a template for the screen adaptations. And that's what's being followed, not necessarily the original novel.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that they have the whole baby aspect, that he's trying to create babies. Now, I have to explain this. The original manuscript of Dracula, which was not published by the English publishers, Archibald and Constable, had Dracula as a scientist. He had a laboratory, and he created half man, half ape creatures. There was a scene called the Red Room scene in Bram's original manuscript where Dracula sacrifices somebody, and the half man, half ape creatures worship him. Decker and I have put those scenes into a comic book coming out in the next month. We bring that back. So it was interesting to see that sort of the science aspect with the Klaus Bang. One of the interesting things about magic, I know you've read one of my stories that alludes to this, is the Scholomance. So the Scholomance was a real dark magic school. It existed, and rulers would send their kids there. And it was always said that the 10th kid would be taken by the devil himself. And Vlad was one of those children. He was taken by the devil. And when he left the Scholomance, historical records show that he was much changed. Yeah. And one of the stories coming out in an anthology, I postulate why that happened. And Dracula, why Dracula then becomes literally the devil's representation on Earth. But the Scholomance was all about control of the weather, which we see in Dracula with the Demeter and the weather and the Demeter. We have science in Scholomance, and that's linked to Dracula being a scientist. And we have transformation, transmutation. We obviously see that in Dracula, and that's all there. It was all true. And apparently it was a school that was near a place called like Hermannstadt, I think it was.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of magic reference and something to do with genetics, that Dracula creates these half men and half ape creatures, and possibly children as well, wanted to have children.
Yes.
So that was played very well. I like that part.
Yes. Same as well. What was interesting as well, and I'm going to briefly go back to the novel and some not inaccuracies necessarily, but some other things as well. In that Klaus Bang version, they really elaborate. I think it's in the second part, I'm not sure, on the trip on the Demeter, I believe. Yes. And for some reason, I found that fascinating. They really captured some kind of atmosphere, some kind of horror. I believe a lot of the stuff was not in the Dracula novel, and that bothered me a little bit. I don't feel it moved things along. I believe the attention that Stoker originally gave it to the Demeter in the original novel was enough. It was enough, and the horrors. I think it's Renfield. It was either the Lugosi version or something else. I'm mistaken. Renfield comes out mad in the Lugosi version in the movie, there's this, everyone's dead, of course, because Dracula has killed everyone on board. But Renfield, his servant, is still alive, and you hear this eerie laughing. And they look, and it's Renfield with his strange laugh. I know that they need a transition from the old country, if you will, to England in the original novel, and I felt that served the purpose. I'm not sure what purpose was served by elaborating on that whole trip in the second part of the Klaus Bang version. However, it was interesting. It did build the horror a little bit. And the sexual aspect, Dracula's sexual preferences were more than hinted at basically throughout the movie. And there were aspects I did like, there were aspects I didn't like. Being basically shallow that I am, I loved his glasses. There he is, he's coming out in broad daylight, and I made my own pair of his glasses, which are a bastardization of the ones from, I believe, the Mummy movie. I think it was 1932 with Boris Karloff. No, it wasn't the Mummy, it was the Invisible Man, and it's a smaller version of those glasses. I thought they were so cool. The ring really bothered me. I loved his ring. I've got also a reproduction of the not Hammer, but Universal Dracula ring. And I love it. It's way too large for me, but I altered it so that it fits. And Klaus Bang's version that he wears in the movie is kind of a streamlined version, but again, lacks that gothicness, which you alluded to. I agree 1,000%. The whole Dracula thing really only works in the Gothic realm, in the shadows and the cobwebs and in the strange architectural isms, if you will, that exist. As soon as you bring him out into broad daylight of the modern world, it's like, oh, he's just another guy who's nuts, rather than, and that may be politically incorrect, I don't care. But truly, he loses his whole mystique, and it's like, why did the writer do that? I don't know. I hope that subsequent versions, if they do star Klaus Bang, will not take place in the future. I hope they drag him back into the past, schlep him back. I almost said that's my Jewishness coming out. And I only speak of this version because it's sort of the latest one. Thank goodness there are authors and illustrators like yourself, you being the writer, and the other illustrators, and of course the great grandson Dacre, to at least keep relatively close to the story, and if it may not seem close to readers and viewers, then there's some kind of historical research behind it. And I was fascinated. I'd like to go back to the scribbles, because I saw those. I forget where it was in one of the novels. The scribbles that Bram Stoker made. Yeah. And those have become reality. Those have been used or elaborated on, and that fascinates me. Can you speak of that a bit?
Is this are these the markings in the book,
yes,
the books in the London Library?
Yeah.
There were scribblings that he made, and it was all to do with notes about whenever he was creating Dracula. I mean, he was a bit of a graffiti artist on those books. Decker was sent over to have a look and verify it was actually his handwriting. It was. As I stated in the previous show, you put Ripper ? So there's little connections to Jack the Ripper. There's an author called Neil Story who's actually written a book about that, about the possible connections. But his notes, there's an original backstory to Dracula where Jonathan Harker goes to the Munich Opera House, and he is going to see the Flying Dutchman. That's the connection to the Demeter.
Yes.
That gets made. And then he goes to the Munich Dead House, and the Munich Dead House, there's a night watchman. He goes up, his throat's cut, Harker runs, and all the bells and the toes of the corpses start to ring, and he encounters his first Nosferatu. I've recreated that and put that into a story, which is coming out this year, and then linked it to Dracula and to the main book of Dracula. So that's one lay aspect. Another aspect is that the ending of Dracula is not what's in your book. It was a volcano erupting.
Yes.
Now you can see little elements of that through the start of the book, where Jonathan Harker and the coachman are driving along. Coachman stops, gets out, and Harker can see this blue flame. It's almost appearing through the coachman. The reason there's a blue flame is that in Romanian superstition, a flame like that would appear where there was a site of treasure.
Ah.
And that was a volcanic region. That was the shows of the volcanic region. It's actually one of the reasons I don't think the coachman and Dracula are the same people. That was brought about through the Universal films, and actually traditionally through the films. Dracula and the coachman's. Dracula doesn't need treasure, but the coachman does, and that's why he leaves and he goes to get the treasure. You see, so it's those little things that you can kind of pick up on. Also, in the original manuscript, Dracula wasn't alone. He had a cook in the house, and there were 4 women. Now, there was no such thing as brides in the novel. Again, a Hollywood construct. The women in Dracula's castle, there's no mention about their relationship to him.
I noticed that.
And I've extrapolated upon that a little bit. And I have written about the 4th bride. And you will see that in the Dracula sequel comic book and in the RPG game coming out next month.
Very cool. So much to look forward to in the Dracula realm, huh?
Yeah, well, it's lovely to be able to take these elements from Bram's work and flesh them out and craft them. I mean, I can tell you a little bit about my interpretation of the 4th bride. That she was taken by Dracula while she was pregnant because Dracula wanted a child. I'm not allowed to tell you any more than that.
Oh,
but that's but that's my interpretation. And you can actually see hints of her in the Universal. No, sorry, the Hammer horror one from the first Dracula in the 50s, where there's this lady comes down and talks to Harker, and Harker already knows that there's a vampire. Dracula's a vampire because you actually see him go and get the stake and the hammer, and he goes and again, it's a little bit of an anachronism there, but there is actually a little truth because of Harker's experience in the Munich Death House. Also, below Dracula's castle is a portal to hell. So again, this link to Dracula being the devil on earth and this portal to hell. We never see in the novel how Jonathan Harker escapes the castle and gets to the nunnery. I've written that part, and he escapes and he sees hell and all sorts of things.
Very exciting. Wow.
It's lovely to be able to do that on the 125th anniversary of Dracula, just to be able to say there is the basics of the story. Here's what we've got. Here's what we have from Bram's notes, and put them into various media.
Absolutely. What was the exact date the book was released?
Not sure. No, actually, I have to. Was it 1897? Oh, sorry, it wouldn't be. It would be. I'm gonna have to Google this now.
We know that it's the 125th anniversary, but just curious.
There was what month? Several. May 26th, 1897. I was right. So 1897.
It wasn't close to. Most of the book, if not all, was written sort of as a journal, Jonathan Harker's journal, and they make a reference to European or pagan holiday in May. I think it is. Is it May?
It May, so St. George's Eve. Yeah, so that's the whenever Jonathan Harker gets out of the Golden Crown Hotel and he's waiting for his carriage, he's given the rosary beads.
So I think it's kind of interesting that the actual book was released a while after that. That date, is almost comparable. However, I'm probably nitpicking.
Well, there's even a discrepancy with Dracula's guest, because Dracula's guest, the coachman,
Yes.
says, Johann, John, don't you know what debt is? And Jonathan Harker's like, no. And the driver says, well, these things are of probably no consequence to an Englishman, but this is St. George's Eve, and this is where the devils hold their sway. So I mean, that's clearly put in Dracula's guest and also Dracula. So to tie the two together, you almost have to say that Dracula's guest happens on the same day that Jonathan Harker then goes to the hotel and leaves the hotel.
Yes.
But Dracula's guest was never released until after. There are little small discrepancies that you can have in continuity. With elements like that.
Yeah, it's all good. That often happens. It used to happen in television. I'm not noticing that as much anymore. I used to look, even as a young child, at continuity. Oh, his hair is different in this shot than it was in the last shot, or that object, what's it doing there? It wasn't in the last shot, sort of thing.
You see, that's what makes you a great magician, because that's probably the heart of analyzing magic. Checking for those little differences,
I'm just curious. First of all, you mentioned magic, and you alluded to perhaps doing magic in this special, a magic effect. If you feel comfortable, that would be great. If not, then we can talk about, or in addition to, we can talk about Bram Stoker and Dracula's connection to magic. I want to also discuss the castle, which I always thought was the commercial one that people take tours on. And I even I altered slightly that exterior for Magic Mike's castle, my castle, in my later shows. I don't know if you looked at that, but you'd go, hey, wait a second, I know that castle, but it's not the real Dracula's castle. So I'd like to talk about that. And I'm sure I've left something out in my excitement, but where do you want to go? Do you want?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Give me a minute, because I've got a visual aid here for people who may not be familiar with the tarot. So, as we talked about earlier, Pamela Coleman Smith, she was illustrator for Lair of the White Worm.
She did also tarot cards. She did the Rider deck.
There it is there. So, Pamela Coleman Smith. There, you people, hopefully be able to see. So that's the importance that Pamela Coleman Smith has within magical circles. Now, Bram Stoker was a Freemason, like myself. He was deeply interested in the occult. He came from a very, I would say his family were quite open to religion. You have to remember, Ireland at that time, there was a lot of conflict between Catholicism and Protestantism, but he saw it his own way spiritually. Masonry was a great help for that. So for those people who don't know, Masonry accepts all religions. There's no hierarchy. As long as you believe in the supreme being, you'll be accepted into the Brotherhood of Freemasonry. That was revolutionary for Bram and for myself, coming from Northern Ireland. And I found myself in a brotherhood of people of many different faiths. And that opened Bram's eyes up to spirituality. It also led him into the Order of the Golden Dawn. Now, a lot of people will know the Order of the Golden Dawn because there was a very infamous individual in it, Aleister Crowley. I try not to give him too much airtime. I don't have a lot of time for him. He, in effect, destroyed the Golden Dawn through his egotism. But Bram was in there with W.B. Yeats, another Irish poet. And Bram we don't know how far Bram got into the Golden Dawn. There are no official records that were kept for the Golden Dawn. It was held in the Master Mason Hall in London. But we know that he was instrumental with the tarot because he introduced Pamela Coleman Smith. Now, there have been letters that have been discovered which may illuminate a little bit more about Bram's occult connection. But if you look through his fantasy and his horror writing, you will certainly see the magic there. As alluded to before, he uses Masonic phrases. In Lair of the White Worm, a police officer says, I take it we two are tiled, which is another Masonic phrase. Henry Irving was also a Freemason. So there's all these links to magic,
Yeah.
and Bram, in his research for Dracula, we found a lot of occult books that he would have taken and read. So we're not sure to exactly what extent that he believed in the supernatural, or how far he went up the Masonic ladder. I have my suspicions that he went up to Holy Royal Arch level, which is actually an Irish started. I'll try not to give you a lecture on Freemasonry, but actually it started with in Ireland. I think Ireland's the oldest country that embraced and adopted Freemasonry. I've written books on it as well. But that's the sort of magic side of Bram Stoker, which might interest a few people. And then we have the castle. So as we talked about, that the original ending, there was a volcanic eruption, which is linked to the death of Dracula and linked to the portal of hell being opened. As Dracula dies, then the volcano erupts. And we realized that this wasn't Bran Castle. Bran Castle was linked to Vlad III, which, as we know, wasn't the original character that Bram Stoker wanted to use for his novel. But it was more linked to Queen Anne. And if you go to Bran Castle, it's still owned by the Habsburg today, and they'll give a little Dracula tour, but it's mostly all about Queen Anne. There's an area in a national park in Romania that Decker went to a couple of years ago and erected a plaque, and that's actually where the castle is.
Ah.
Now, if you go and have a look at Dracul, at the back of Dracul, you'll see there's coordinates, and those coordinates are where Dracula's castle actually is laid out. One of the most interesting parts of Dracul is Decker's author's note at the end, because he does go into that in some detail.
Fascinating. Oh, I love that. I love where fiction and reality intersect, and where one can find truth, because to me it's all about truth. It's all about finding the reality. Maybe it has to do with my interest in magic as well, in that this looks like, I guess I'll do it here, it looks like I've taken my ring and I'm blowing, and I've created the illusion that I've put my ring in there, but I really haven't. Where's the truth? Well, the truth lies in the fact that the ring is here. I should have made it back on my finger. It never really went. But to me, that's kind of an overlap, if you will, of reality versus non-reality, of seeing a reality or perhaps a parallel reality or universe. I can get all metaphysical, and I won't either, because we'll put people to sleep out there, and that's not my intention. But to me, that's the beauty of some works of fiction, Dracula being one of them, is where did he being the author, the original author, where did he cull from reality, from physical reality, from places that he describes that seem so real? And even the people, were they real people or not? Or were they metaphors? Who were all these people? So that just fascinated me when I saw these scribblings in the margins, etc. And it's like, well, he's writing, he's making notes to himself, and this and that, and the reference to Jack the Ripper and who really was Dracula, and the fact that you've brought in the Lyceum Theater and all of this sort of thing, which actually this is the only, without giving anything away, in the Undead, there's a mention, I believe it's the Lyceum Theater, and there's this whole neat, that touched something within me as well, where certain characters will say are brought into the theater, and there's some historical accuracies, if you will. So then that got me thinking, well, where else are there in reality historical accuracies in that whole Dracula thing? So in the whole realm of Dracula. So no disrespect intended. I know I tend to say the Dracula thing, but I mean to say realm, the whole realm, which is fascinating.
Well, I'll tell you a hypothesis that Decker has about Van Helsing. So as we stated earlier, Bram said every character in the novel was real. Van Helsing may have been Bram's brother, Forney Stoker. He was a medical doctor. He was involved in psychiatry. He was a chief medical officer in Ireland. And that he may have been the template for Van Helsing. Elements like that, I find interesting. I mean, Decker and I are looking at Charlotte Stoker, so Bram's mum's diary, and we looked at the cholera epidemic. And I wrote one of the strangest things. There's there's a few strange things that have happened as I've been writing this. The audio drama that we played earlier, I'm going to tell you now, I have no memory of writing that, but I did write it. I wrote it last year, and it was, Decker just said to me, "We need something written. Can you write it?" I was the night before, and I went to bed, and I woke up 5 hours later and wrote it. And I remember Kristen, who did the drama, he's like, that, he said, "You've just given away the entire." I said, "Is that really what happened? You know, did Dracula meet Bram Stoker?" And I said, "Well, I've always had a thing about the creation meeting the creator, and that was the whole concept of the Whisper in the Darkness." I have no memory of writing it.
I believe that. I believe that some people believe that when they write or do any artistic endeavor, we're channeling some kind of higher power, if you will.
Could have been some. I mean, the other thing is that I wrote a story, a comic book story that's coming out this year for the cholera, and I read the diary of Charlotte Stoker, and it's quite brief. How she mentions cholera, and cholera is really important to the town of Sligo, where she was brought up as a child. And we see links to Dracula. We actually believe that Dracula's carriage was based on the old cholera carts. And again, we go back to vampires and disease, right?
Yes.
Epidemics.
Yes.
And I was writing the script for it, and I wrote it in 3 hours. I got up at midnight and wrote it in 3 hours. And there's tears coming down my cheeks. There's a particular scene. She talks about it in the diary. And she just says that she goes to see her friend Mary next door, and Mary dies of cholera. Now, as I was writing the comic book script, I saw this very, very clearly, that she goes upstairs. So Charlotte Stoker goes upstairs. How they tried to get rid of cholera was plates of sulfur, and they would plates of sulfur and burn it because they believed it was in the air. In fact, Sligo was a hell town because they had big barrels of sulfur that were burning day and night. Bodies were getting carted off. People were lying down dead. It was hellish, and it still left its mark in the town today. But I saw her go upstairs, and she was putting in the plates, and she hears the sound next door on the walls, and it's her friend Mary crying. She runs downstairs, and her mum and dad are there, and she's going out the door, and her mum says, "Where are you going?" But the COVID outbreak now, I said, "Where are you going? Don't go outside." And she said, "Mary's crying." And her father says, "Let her go." Sure, Mary's parents were carried out that day. So Mary's parents had died. Her friend next door's parents had died and carted out. So she goes in, and she looks up, and she goes, sees the staircase, and she starts to go up the staircase. Then I cut to Mary in bed, blacking out almost. And you see the eyelids going down and up, and she's got a fever with cholera, and she opens her eyes, and she sees this shadowy figure coming towards her, and she screams. She's terrified. She doesn't realize it's Charlotte. And then she comes to, and then she realizes it's Charlotte, and Charlotte gets scared and says, "Look, I'll go and get my mum. You're really sick." The little girl blacks out again and wakes up, and Charlotte Stoker's mum's there. Charlotte Stoker's mum's maternal instinct has kicked in. She doesn't care about the disease anymore. She's now with this wee girl, and the wee girl dies. And I have it that Charlotte gets into bed with the wee girl, and they talk about, she holds the wee girl, and they talk about what it was like to skip and stuff. And very, very slowly, this angel starts to appear in the comic book. And then eventually the angel takes little girl married to heaven. I had tears, just literally. Still
Yes.
quite emotional about it. And Decker read it and rang me up and said he had cried. I don't remember how I saw that. The artist rang me up and said, how do I illustrate this? I said exactly how I wrote it, with the tears on the page, because that's what leads through to the audience.
Excellent.
But that's how much the legacy of Bram's family means to Decker himself. It's very important. And again, it goes beyond Dracula. Dracula's always linked, but it goes beyond that. That there is, I think, the Stoker family legacy is largely undiscovered. It's largely untapped. Decker has won an award for his work on the Stoker legacy. It's getting presented this year. I'm lucky enough to have won an award for my writing in horror at the same event. I swear it wasn't fixed. We were told about it in different days, but I think it's these stories are very important, and we do want to continue bringing out the Bram Stoker graphic novels of his fantasy stories. We want to keep delving into Dracula and digging through that as well. But it's been a tremendous journey that started with me writing a science fiction Dracula comic that Decker liked, and he rang me on the phone and said, "Hey, do you want to team up?" And that was a year and a couple of months ago.
Very cool. So much has happened. I happened to look on Facebook. Your feed comes up, and so much has happened just in the past week. Or two even. And to me, that suggests, and I don't know if people are fatalists or not out there, I tend to believe when you're on the right track, things they move forward, and they move forward often quickly. And when there's too many bumps in the road, well, I tend to zig and zag when I'm supposed to zig and zag and all that sort of thing. So obviously you're on the right track. It is the 175th anniversary of the release of the original Dracula by Bram Stoker. So excited, honored to have had you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
I want to again give out your website addresses for people.
Yeah, it's www.dark-universes.com and www.stokerverse.com.
Excellent. And again, if anybody has any questions for Chris, he's on Facebook. There's the Stokerverse. That's also
we've got our Stokerverse Facebook group. We also have Dark Universes Facebook group as well, which it's slightly outside the Stokerverse, so it's a bit more speculative with Dracula and horror, but I can be reached there as well.
Excellent. Once again, I have to thank you, Chris, for taking the time, because time is precious for everybody, and your time was appreciated by me, and I'm sure a lot of folks out there got a lot out of this. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Matt. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Chris. And most of all, I want to thank all of you out there for joining us this day for Magical People. We'll see you all next time.